Greetings and welcome to today's tarot reading. This week is going to be a little bit different from anything that I've done up to this point, and so it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. We will be doing a variation of the Strength card spread from, I believe it was September 7th, yes, from Sasha Graham's 365 Tarot Spreads. Now, the purpose of today's spread is to focus on an area of challenge in our lives, and using the symbols and imagery in our strength card, we will explore how to tap into the many qualities and characteristics of strength to help overcome and come through this situation. And this is why one of the reasons why I said it was going to be a bit different is this will be a one card reading, but it's going to be reading it from multiple perspectives and looking at multiple different elements of the card. So the question that will be guiding the reading is, what ways can you best embody strength at this time? So before I get into it, I want you to take a couple minutes to, just kind of close your eyes and breathe in and ask yourself, what situation in my life do I need strength right now? And just take whatever the first thing is that pops up. And that's what you're going to focus on as we go through this reading. And then if you want, you can go through it again with your own strength card and see what comes up and what's kind of different from this reading here. One of the things that I did with this reading was I generalized a lot of the elements from the first one. And in fact, I combined two sections. So the original reading had 8 cards in the spread. This one doesn't have any cards, but it has 7 different areas of focus that we're going to be doing with the one strength card. And so the first thing that we're going to be looking at is the character that is in the strength card. And the character that we're going to be looking at will represent you in this current situation. And things that we're going to be looking at is, first of all, is there a character in your card? If there's no character, that's going to mean something as well. And so if there is a character, who are they? Are they male? Are they female? Are they androgynous? And then what does this bring up for you? And like as we're going through, it's going to be the same questions kind of for each element, but we're going to be looking at it from a bit of a different angle. And so because the first section that we're going to look at represents you, what we're going to also be asking is, how does this inform me as how I am in the situation? Because it's you, right? Like it's representing you and what it is you most need to be aware of in the situation at this time. And so I am using the same card that I had from before, and we have a woman who is in the card. And so first of all, when we're looking at do you have a figure? Yes, we have a figure. So this is going to be saying that there's something directly to me. If there's no figure in there, then it means that you're absent from the situation. Although you're part of the situation, you're absent. So this means, because there is a woman in here, it means that I am being asked to be directly involved, or I already am directly involved in the situation. I am a pivotal person as far as how things are going to work out. Because it's a woman, it doesn't necessarily mean that it connects directly to me because I'm a woman, but it means that it's so now you're looking at, so what does this woman represent to me? And when I look at her, I think, she looks very serene. And like when I look at her, I think, am I embodying that, right? Do I look calm? Do I feel calm when I think about this situation? And so I want to be looking at her as kind of a mirror for how I am in this situation and how involved and trying to think of the word, invested I am in the outcome of this situation. And so having her right there center stage of the card as well is very important. Now, it's hard for me to tell because when I'm looking at it, she's facing that way, which when I look at her, she's actually facing towards the left, which means that one of the things that we're also being asked to keep in mind is the directionality of the character, right? So if they're facing to the left of the card, then there's something in the past that is brought them here. If they're focusing to the right, then there's something in the future that's driving them. And if they're focusing straight forward, then they're very much in the present. And so some of the things that might come up in the rest of the reading will indicate what about the past is it that has that has our attention right now. So we're here, we're present. There's something from the past that's calling our attention. We need to embody a bit of calmness in the situation as we sit and when we go through it. And a lot of times, because this is directing directly to us, it's when you're in those quiet moments by yourself, how are you being, right? So that's some things to keep in mind. The next thing that we're going to look at is if there's an animal or a creature. And I put creature because depending on the deck you have and depending on how the imagery is done, there might not be an animal per se, but there may be a creature. And you think a lot of like I want to say like the mythological creatures kind of themed decks and stuff like that. And there's some more I want to say the Cthulhu deck has more creature-esque aspects of it. So the first thing you want to look at is, like, is there an animal, a creature on the card? And we have a tiger. We have a white tiger. So yes, we do. If you don't, then that means that so the animal and the creature is referring to your instincts and your intuition. And so just like with the figure, if there's no creature, there's no animal on there, then it means that your instincts, your intuition, you're either shutting it down or it's gone so quiet or you're not following it. And so that's a really key indication as to, maybe where the first step needs to be in resolving the situation. So we have a white tiger, which means our intuition is there and present, because again, like the woman, it's very much present. And in fact, the tiger is in front of the woman, which means we need to be listening to our intuition and following our instinct more so, because that's what's here and that's what's foremost in the image. And then you look at, okay, so we have a tiger. So what does the tiger represent? And it was interesting because on most strength cards, it will depict a lion, and the lion being the king of the jungle and stuff like that. However, in some traditions, tigers are also seen very much as royalty. And so having the tiger on here is, it's very much an idea of regalness, of strength, of courage. One of the interesting things, though, about the tiger is also seen to be unpredictable, right? And so that's something to kind of be paying attention to, is that our intuition and our intuitive hits may be unpredictable. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. What it means is they're coming when we may not be expecting them. They're coming in ways that we may not be expecting them. And so when we're looking at that, we're asking like, okay, so how does this inform how we're tuning into our intuition, right? Like how does this inform what we need to be paying attention to? And because of the elements of the tiger, we really, really definitely want to be paying to the intuition hits that come out of left field, that are just like, oh my goodness, like where did that come from? And really honoring those and following those intuitive hits. The other thing that I would say too is looking at, we'll talk about this in some other elements, but with the tiger, it's a white tiger, right? So that's another thing to be paying attention to, right? Because you would expect most of the time that it would be, like a black and an orange tiger, but we have the white tiger, and the white tigers have a bit more regality to them. They're kind of looked at a little bit more with awe, because they tend to be a bit more rare than the black and orange tigers. And so white also has an element of purity to it, right? So we're also being told by this white tiger that your intuitive hits will be pure. They will be trusting, right? Like trust in them, because they are coming directly from a source or a universe that is here to guide you through and teach you how to embody strength. Now, the other thing that's really interesting is we also have the tiger's face in the background, right? So we have intuitive hits that are coming, and they're going to be very in the forefront for us, and they're going to be, kind of unpredictable. And here's another way how that unpredictability comes, because rarely will you see two representations of the animal on the strength card. And so, both of them actually are facing the present, which means there are some intuitive hits that we're getting right now that are very important for us to be tuning in and paying attention to. The next thing that we're going to look at on the card are any symbols. And so first you're going to look and see if there are any symbols. So on this card, there are definitely three. So there's the letter here, which is, I believe it's Teth, which is the ninth Hebrew letter. And then we have the symbol for Leo from astrology. And then we have the Roman numerals for 8. The other thing you want to look at is if there's any missing. Now, what's interesting is on this card and this whole deck, there's no words in the deck. So the strength, like the word strength for the strength card is missing, which means to me, when that's the first thing that kind of pops out. And so before I kind of get into that, like, so when you're looking at the symbols, what you're looking at is you're looking at the conditioning around you, around the situation, and where you may be allowing the conditioning and past experiences to be leading and to be guiding. And this, is kind of having us look at, like, how does this inform my understanding of the situation? Because if you're going by you, then you understand better than if you're going by conditioning, because conditioning has us doing things and making decisions based on external expectations, right? And so this is kind of like, is this an internalized or an externalized approach that is being taken? So when I go back to the fact that the word strength is missing, one of the things that kind of really makes me understand is that language is irrelevant in this kind of situation, because language can be so misinterpreted, right? And so when we're looking at how to bring strength into this situation, it's not about talking our way out, is what it's telling us. It's not about talking our way out. It's about being symbolic, and being symbolic in like almost like a out of the box thinking, but in traditional senses. Because if you think about it, we've got astrological, Roman, and Hebrew symbols all in here, and these all come from very ancient civilizations, very ancient belief thoughts, right? Astrology's been around like for forever, as far as I can tell. And then the same thing like with the Hebrew alphabet and the Romans numeral system and stuff like that. Like, they've been around for so long. But what's interesting, especially about the Roman numerals, is having been an elementary school teacher and the system took out the teaching of Roman numerals, there's a lot of younger generations that are really struggling and only know numerals through like either video games or movies that use them in like sequels and stuff like that. And so it's interesting how this is coming up. And so when we're looking at, the types of conditioning, we might also be looking at how, we're in the process of changing things. We're in the process of differentiating between old ways of doing things and new innovative ways of doing it. And because we have to take the language out, we have to be able to do it through symbolic actions, through proofs, right? Like, so you might be using a lot of imagery to help kind of embody strength in your own way. And I go back to the original reading where they were using a deck that had strength depicting a man with a club beating a lion, right? And that's an image that has long been taken out of the idea of strength. Strength is seen to be like, there is that kind of brutality of strength, but there's also the the compassion and the kindness. You think about a tree that's able to kind of sway in the tree in the wind, and we think there's a definite beauty of strength in that, because they can bend so far without breaking. So those are the kinds of things that you're looking at. And so when you're looking at how does this inform my understanding, the other thing would be about it too is like, where may there be conditioning that's done in such a symbolic way that there's a difficulty in understanding. So what I mean by that is, I'll go back to the Roman numerals, right? Like, so if somebody's talking in Roman numerals to somebody who doesn't really understand them, it's easy enough to have people take advantage of them and to sway, which is why it's really important to be paying attention to what's actually going on and how it's making you feel, right? So that's where the intuitive, so the symbols are kind of in front of the intuition. So something's going to be brought to you and your conditioning is going to respond in an instinctive way. And that's how you're going to make your meaning. The next one we're going to look at is the clothing. So this goes back again to the first question, right? Is there a person in here? And if there is no person, then this question is also going to kind of have a different outcome, because obviously if there's no person, there's no clothing most of the time. But this is also interesting because some decks are depicted with a lot of nude characters. So you might have a strength character that has no clothing on. And so the clothing is basically looking at a representation of how you are presenting within the situation. So our first look at the person was, how are you in relation with the situation. Now it's how are you in relation with the situation with others, right? Like, are you masking? So if you're wearing clothes and you're wearing a lot of clothes, are you masking how you are in the situation? If there's less clothes, if the clothes are more free flowing, maybe you're more authentic in the situation. And so you want to look at that. You want to look at the colors of the clothes. Like, what do the colors represent to you? What do they mean to you? So I have a woman who is, she's dressed in a very free flowing white robe. But when I was looking at the card before I started the reading, the other thing that I noticed is she is wearing a lot of ornamental jewelry. And so at first I was thinking, like maybe she's a priestess, maybe she's involved in a sacred rite. But then as soon as you add the jewelry as well, there is a level on there of regality, regalness, something like that, that kind of puts her a step above other people. And so there could be a bit of masking in there, in that you're coming into the situation with this feeling that you know better, or that you're better in some way, or you have a higher purpose than the other people. So it becomes a bit tricky when you're looking at that. And so what you're looking at is how does what she's wearing, and how is it that her appearance is informing my appearance externally, right? Like, is my image relaying what it is that I want to say, or is it in contrast to what it is that I'm trying to say or wanting to say? And so one of the things that she kind of gives off is this idea of authority, right? That regardless of what she's doing or what she's saying, she is very, very present in where she is, in what she's doing. She's bringing the traditions, and she's bringing the practices of the past forward, right? So when you're in this situation, you have to remember that your past experiences are going to be very important in how you can express yourself. There's going to be a lot of knowledge in there, and you're not going to have to hide. You're not going to have to pretend. You're not going to have to, put on airs even in order to be heard or to be seen. You just have to remember that, you can be there, and you don't have to pretend in any way. Like, just be authentic in the situation. And that's going to help to really clear up a lot of problems that might be going on, especially if there's miscommunications and misunderstandings. And there's a power struggle, right? Because if there's a power struggle going on, you definitely want to make sure that you're coming forward, not playing into the power struggle, but also not putting yourself down, or shorting out your abilities and everything, right? So be there, be confident, and be proud of what you have, right? Because that's a big part of strength too, is confidence, right? Like, you have to be there and you have to be confident, but you don't have to go around like in the original card where you're beating people over the head with a club. The next one that we're looking at is we're looking at the gestures. So this is any element within the card, right? So we're looking at the tiger's gestures. We're looking at the woman's gestures. We're looking at the tiger in the background. You're looking at all the gestures, and you're asking, like, what are they doing? What are all of the different components in the card? What are they doing? And so first, like, are there any? Like, are they just, because even if they're just sitting, that's still a gesture. That's still doing something. And what do these gestures mean to you? Right. And if you have a lot of things going on, pick one or two to look at. So what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the gesture of she has her hand closed like this, as if she had like water in her hand, and she's pouring it over the top of the tiger's head. And it's all glowing and everything. So it's an energetic current. So she is offering something to the tiger who's just sitting there. And what's interesting is, having talked about the tiger before, the tiger is there, and the tiger looks very relaxed and is very kind of like receptive and everything. However, because the tiger is unpredictable, you also have to keep in mind that that tiger is very, very aware, right? No matter what she does, no matter how sacred this action might seem to be, the tiger is very much aware of her, but also of what's going on in the environment, which is why the tiger, right? Like, so as you're doing the things and as you're going through, you have to be very much aware of the instinctual things that are coming up, because that's the connection between the woman and the tiger, right? Is she's the one that's doing things in the world, and the tiger is the one that is guiding and informing and helping and directing, right? And then you have the tiger in the background who's watching. And I was just looking to see eyes, right? So this tiger's eyes are actually, they're not closed. I think the woman's eyes are closed all the way, but the tiger's, which is kind of feeds into what I was just saying, right? Like your instinct and your intuition is always on alert. It's always looking, but it can still be subdued. It can be relaxed, and it knows when it's safe, right? So the tiger is in a position where, there's no need to be worrying about what's going on, but the tiger in the back is again embodying that I'm watching, right? I'm watching from the shadows. I'm keeping an eye out. Everything is really good. And so when you're looking at the gestures, this is asking, like, how does this inform your actions in the situation? And so what it means is you have to have a connection between what you're doing and what you're feeling, right? So when you're talking to the people, when you're trying to do things, you have to feel how that feels instinctively, intuitively, and know that that's the right thing. And your tiger, or whatever your animal is, like your instinct and your intuition, is going to tell you, you need to be more assertive, you need to be more aggressive, or it's going to say you need to step back, you need to be calmer, you need to be, more compassionate, you need to be thinking more, right? So there's a flow back and forth between the two, because there are different elements and characteristics of strength that we are asking, which ones do we embody? And what we need to be doing is we need to be flowing. We need to be flowing between the two, because if you think of, again, this is the intuition, which is very much a guiding, and then you have like the woman who also embodies this kind of softness, this gentleness, but they both will have to have their time in the light. The next one we have is the background. Now the background is going to be different on all kinds of cards, and mine, I have a bit of a jungle background with almost like ruins are temple-ish, right? Because they're sitting here on steps and there's steps behind, but then you've got like this green temple, kind of like you got the green of the jungle, but when you look at them, they're actually different stone heads that have greenery. So she's in some kind of temple is where she is. And so the background is the history of the situation, right? And so having the temple here, what does the temple mean to you? So to me, like a temple means a place of respect, a place of worship, a place of, in sometimes it's a place of silence and secrets as well, right? And so what you're looking at then is, how does the background of the situation inform your actions and your understanding? So if you're in a situation where, like, using the words that I've used for the temple, right? Like, so maybe you're where you are and you know that there's still things that are being held back from you, right? Maybe there's part of the situation that you're still unclear on. And because of maybe the conditioning you've had, you're afraid to go forward and question, but your intuition is telling you, you need to go forward. You need to ask. You can't be stuck in the past, right? So we're looking at all these elements that have already come up. There's something in the past that's keeping this situation stuck from being able to be revealed. There's language issues that are causing communication, and kind of paying attention to what's going on, trying to flow back and forth between being, not necessarily confrontational, but standing firm and true and being authentic, and getting what you need to say across, versus hiding and just kind of watching what's going on and building up more animosity and more any kind of like negative emotion or idea about it. And so having all of this going on, it's very, very important to remember that, even the idea of the temple goes back to the symbols and stuff like that, right? Like that's all part of conditioning, because we create these ideas of all the words that we're using, right? And so I think that's really interesting when we look at this card that has no words and a deck that has no words in it, and thinking, well, how then do you make meaning? How then do you make understanding if you can't use your words? And it goes back into how you feel. It goes back into how you act, right? And so being very true and very clear about that. And because of all of the elements in the background, maybe there's been a lot of times where authority has taken your voice away. Maybe there have been times where, you were kept out of things because maybe you weren't seen to be good enough, or you weren't ready, or ethically it was just something you didn't want to get involved in, right? So those are definitely things to consider in the situation. And then the last thing that we're going to look at is an outstanding color on the card. And this is the emotional undertones of everything that's going on, right? And so what you're going to do is you're going to look at your card and you're going to say, so what's the color that jumps out most for me? And at first I thought it was the green, but when I look at the card now, what it is the blue. So we've got the blue in the bottom of the water, but definitely the blue in the tiger's eyes. So the blue really, really does jump out for me. And what does the color mean for you? Well, blue is a bit of serenity, right? Like it's a calming color. It is a color that of the sky, and so there's a vast openness as well with blue. And so you want to think of, well, how does that, like inform? And it's a kind of in this sense, it's a kind of a good situation, or it's a good kind of ending note, because when you think about the vastness, the openness of blue and the depths, right? Because blue is also connected to water, there's a depth there. And so this situation is offering an opportunity for expansion. It's offering an opportunity for us to go deeper in ourselves and in our understanding, and to create a deeper relationship, a deeper understanding with our strength, with our compassion, with ourselves, as well as with others, right? Like, so when we go back to the original question of like, how can I best embody strength at this time in this situation? We're basically being asked to really tune into our intuition at this time, to really follow through and not listen to the words, but watch the undertones, watch the subtext, pay attention to everything else that's going on. There is an opportunity for expansion here, but there has to also be a way to get beyond maybe the suspicion that there's secrets, maybe the worry that there's something going on that you don't know, or that you don't understand, or that you're being kept out of, right? It's important to be very much aware of how you're bringing past hurts, past wounds, past situations forward into this situation, right? Like, it's important for us to be present here, to be listening to our intuition, to be tuning into what our body's saying, so that no matter what's going on and no matter what the outcome is, we know that we've done the best that we can for the best resolution that's possible at this time. And so I hope you enjoyed this one card in-depth reading, and that it inspires you to maybe do something similar with other cards or other situations that you're dealing with. And I do invite you to pull a strength card from a deck that you have, and I will post the questions and the reflection pieces in the comments, and go through and see what comes up for yourself, because they will be different. Depending on the cards, depending on the day, right? Like, what you look at today might not be the same thing that catches your eye tomorrow. And so join me again next week for another variation on this strength card reading, where we will be doing, again, another different way of doing a reading. And in the meantime, like or subscribe below, and I will see you again next week for another reading. Take care.